Hi everyone, and welcome back to Design by Committee, the show where we talk about how the field of design affects our everyday life. So as we get started out trying to figure out what this thing I'm doing is, we're going to cover some kind of basics of the field of design, and today we're going to talk about design thinking. So design thinking is a buzzword right now for sure. If not, it's already been completely played out as a buzzword. It's used a lot in business and innovation. What design thinking is it's essentially just taking the thought process a designer would apply to creating a graphic layout or creating a product and applying that to solve any type of large complex problem. So how is design thinking different? It's integrative, it's iterative, and it's empathetic. It's integrative, it tries to bring in a lot of different people of different specialties to make sure that we're going about the problem the correct way. It doesn't have somebody who's really skilled in business trying to solve a healthcare problem on their own. It's iterative, so even if the first solution is not correct, it will focus on rapidly coming up with changing ideas to eventually get to the correct idea. And also it's empathetic. So it's actually making sure that you're solving the correct problem by first connecting with users. And actually, its strengths are some of the problems that design thinking has. It's iterative, so when a design solution is proposed, you don't know if it's the right solution yet. And that can sometimes, in the business world, be unsuccessful. People often expect specialists to come with the right decision. However, someone who knows about design thinking knows that we can never know if it's the right decision until it's implemented. But with design thinking skills, you can quickly iterate on an idea and eventually change it to the correct idea. So what's the design thinking process? This has become pretty popular at this point. A bunch of different consulting firms, design firms, schools will all have kind of their own spin on this, but the basic steps are develop empathy and do research, define the problem, ideate on it, prototype it, and then test that solution. So the first step is empathize, which is essentially connecting with the actual user. Now this might seem pretty obvious, but you'd be surprised how many products and services are developed by the business side of things and not by actually seeing what the user really needs. This step of the design process usually includes ethnographic research, where you actually go and watch users interacting in the space or in the realm at which you're interested in creating a product or service and seeing what they actually do. I would say, like, most of the time, what you think the real problem is not the real problem. So the next step is you define the problem. So it might be something like users are looking for the best way to store leftovers after making a large meal. And you make assumptions on those based on your best guess of how it should work. Now, these are guesses, but they will be tested later in the process, so it's okay if we get them wrong. We're just making our best educated guess. So the next two steps in the design process are iterate and prototype. And they kind of go in a cycle together. Essentially, you will create a design and then create some type of artifact, whether that's a clickable app, whether that's a physical prototype, like a model, and you will have users interact with that. And every single time you do that, you will slightly adjust your hypothesis, create a new prototype, and put it back in front of users. Now, eventually, when you think that you've got it as good as you can get it, as close to as perfect as you can, then you will eventually put it out into the world, and that's also testing it. You will try to track how it's doing, whether that's through analytics, if it's a digital product, or through tracking sales, and eventually you'll go right back to the beginning and start over. It's a kind of continuous process. So how can you use this in your real life? Well, the first step is empathize. Try to find out what the real problem you're trying to solve is. A lot of times we are going after the wrong solution. Take the time to connect with who you're solving for and figure out what they really need. I think the second one is iterate and prototype. I don't think that we notice, but we actually interact with prototypes all the time. Right now down the street, actually, there is a new Italian restaurant that's by Starbucks. And essentially it's a prototype for them. They built this entire store to see if it's going to be a good concept for them to go nationally or internationally with. If you've ever seen an ad for a product online and tried to buy it and it said we're not in your area yet, a lot of times that's a prototype where they will see how many people are interested in that product and we play into it. I know I do. One thing that works a lot for me is like a model. If I ever need to make something or do something around the house, sometimes I'll mock it up, especially if it's a mechanism, just with like paper and tape and try it out to see if I know how it's gonna work. Even a sketch can be a prototype. And that is all I have today. Thank you, and good night.